Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Toolkit Tuesday. I'm excited about doing this. My name is Jeff Aaron. I am the VP of Enterprise Marketing here at Juniper. And this is actually my first Toolkit Tuesday. It's exciting for me. I've been doing Wireless Wednesdays for about 2 some odd years right now, and this is actually the first time I've had a chance to come in and do Toolkit Tuesday. And so this is going to be an opportunity for us to come in and talk about primarily, how the AI-driven enterprise is really changing networking, how we're able to bring in new automation and new insight, especially into user experiences, into your day-to-day operations for better IT experiences. But obviously, the focus of this one is going to be a little bit more skewed towards the wired side of the house. We launched our new Wired Assurance service towards the end of 2019. And we're excited to kind of talk through that a little bit, give a demo of that, and talk through some of the use cases of that. So the way this is going to flow is I will spend about 10, 15 minutes kind of setting it up, explaining a little bit what is the AI-driven enterprise and the Juniper vision. Then we'll go into about 10, 15 minutes of demo, and then we'll open up to Q&A. So along the way, if you do have any questions, please put them in the box, and we'll try to answer them either online and try to answer them at the end as well. I will bring on one of my colleagues, Teresa, to help with the questions at the end. So without further ado, let's get started. So for those of you that are not familiar with the AI-driven enterprise, I do want to set the stage a little bit. What Juniper's term is on how we're kind of leveraging AI to change the IT game. And this is really being driven by what we're seeing in the industry from real customer examples and real experiences. So, for example, Amazon is a missed Juniper customer, and they had a challenge where in their fulfillment centers, if the network goes down, the wireless and the wired network, they literally lose millions to billions of dollars depending on how long it's down. And the challenge is things like robots don't have the ability to call for help if the network doesn't connect. So they wanted the ability to provide assurance on their network, things like SLEs, so that if something goes down, they can either self-correct it or fix it before the user or the IoT device even knows it happened and minimize the impact. So that's an example of how the old world of IT had to move from something that was very reactive to something that's very proactive. Okay? Another good example is ServiceNow. They are obviously a large SaaS company, and they were being frustrated by user-driven help desk requests. They're actually getting about 100 trouble tickets per month, and they basically said, look, we're chasing our tails trying to figure this out. How do we get ahead of this? How do we solve problems? How do we get visibility into the user experience so we know exactly what they're experiencing and we can solve these problems before they even exist, right? And so by implementing a virtual network assistant, they were able to get those 100 help desks per month down to 2 right now today. And so that's, again, an example where AI really came to save the day and provide automation. Another good example that I like to focus on is Google, right? They have a philosophy that machines can configure machines better than humans, right? So if they can actually roll out hardware and software configurations using automation and using templates and using AI, they can avoid a lot of the headaches associated with fat fingering configuration changes. And so that's an example of how they were able to transform their IT using the AI-driven enterprise. And the last example I'll give here is the VA administration. Down in Orlando is one of their flagship hospitals, and they wanted their network not just to be about connectivity, but to be about personalized experiences. So when vets come on site, they want to be able to wake up an app, greet them, give them directions of where they want to go, and give them other personalized, useful information to customize their journey. So that's what the AI-driven enterprise is all about. And what you can see is what this lets you do is keep up with the demands that come from increased scale, from increased applications, from increased devices and operating systems. And the only way to do that is by leveraging AI in the core. Okay? This is part of the actual Juniper vision here. So we really do want to do AI for IT across the entire thing. So as we said, this is part of the whole AI-driven enterprise right now. And so this is the Juniper vision is that really when you get onto the network, you want a common user experience from the minute you get on to the minute you download your applications. And so this is about user experiences, but also about automation for operational simplicity. Okay, and what happens is Juniper started here on the wireless domain. It started doing things like service levels and a virtual network assistant for troubleshooting your wireless domain. And then we've actually subsequently moved it to the wired domain. And that's what we're going to show you how both of those are working. And then also what we're doing is the Juniper Vision is now expanding this across the whole portfolio. So you'll see over time that we will actually continue to do this, where we'll actually be bringing in things like WAN optimization, SD-WAN, as well as data center optimization into the core. So the beauty here is by having a common architecture where you're able to pull data from Juniper switches, pull data from Mist access points, move it into the cloud, move it into a common AI engine, you do have the ability to do everything there. Okay. And so here is an example of what the Juniper Mist solution looks like. And so you can see that there is hardware involved. So whether it's a Mist access point or whether it is a Juniper, in this instance, an EX access switch, and it could be the 2300, 3400, or 43, 4600 families, there's hardware involved because, frankly, that is what's collecting the data and sending it to the cloud. They say AI is only as good as the data, just like wine is only as good as the grapes. And so the ability to actually collect, for example, on the Mist side, 150 user states every 2 seconds from the access points, and using Juno telemetry for similar type of data on the wired side really gives us visibility that no one else has, right? But what's more important, as we said, is this is all moving to the cloud. And is a purpose-built modern cloud built on common cloud elements like microservices, like Storm, Spark, Kafka for resiliency, for redundancy, for scale. So we actually looked at how LinkedIn and Netflix and how Google, how they built their cloud, and that's how we built ours. We had the luxury of coming at this recently. We had the luxury of learning from all these other cloud and SaaS providers on how we want to build our cloud, because we know that we have to collect an enormous amount of data to be able to correlate that information, to be able to come back with useful insight. So the cloud is key. And then obviously on top of that cloud, it's all about the software subscription services. So to date, as part of the Mist solution, there's actually 5 subscription services. We're going to focus on 3 of them here. So the first is called Wi-Fi Assurance. And so again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but I will show you this because it sets the foundation for wired assurance. But what wireless assurance lets you do is set up things like SSIDs, do troubleshooting across your wired and wireless domain. You can set up SLEs, and you can go and do policy-based management. Wired assurance does the same thing now on the wired side. Again, similar concept in terms of managing switch health, doing things like SLEs, et cetera, for doing all your day-to-day wired operations. On top of that, on top of both wireless assurance and Wi-Fi assurance, we have our solution called Marvis DNA, or Virtual Network Assistant. This is like having a IT expert sitting right there next to you. So it is a true example of AI where you can type in natural language queries like, what was wrong with my access point? Or what was wrong with, Jeff's iPhone yesterday? Or what's wrong with the camera connected to switch port 23? And it'll come back and it'll understand the intent behind the questions and give you answers to help solve them. So this is really a help desk assistant, and it really takes troubleshooting to the next level, and just overall statistics and analytics. And then what I won't show you here is our location services. So if you do want to do things like, as I mentioned, with the VAs doing, like engage with folks when they come on site, push information like advertisements or directions, you want to do asset location and location-based analytics, that's all available, as well as premium analytics, which was actually just launched about a week ago for taking this to the next level for business intelligence. So if you are interested in learning more specifically about the wireless side, or specifically around the location side, I do encourage you to attend one of our weekly Wireless Wednesdays where we do go into more information on that. But as we said, here we're going to focus more on the 3 on the left side, a touch on wireless assurance, as well as wired assurance and Marvis DNA. As we mentioned, there are various hardware portfolios, and on the EX side, here is a sample of our portfolio. It is the EX access and aggregation switches that are now managed via the Mist Cloud, everything from ZTP for easy setup to all the things I'll show you in a second. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about 2 of the main services that I am going to show in the demo. The first one, as you mentioned, is wired assurance. And as I said, this is built off the foundation of our Wi-Fi assurance. And the goal here is really to kind of do two things. The first is what we call basic switch health. So this actually works with any third-party switch. This could be a Juniper EX switch like I just showed you, or it could be a Cisco Catalyst or HPE or Meraki switch. It doesn't matter. But what we do is we actually do have the ability to pull in a variety of basic health information to those devices. So it's everything from is it running the right firmware, it's firmware compliance, to is it drawing or giving off the right amount of power? Is it running too hot? Is CPU too hot? Are your VLAN configurations accurate? To also something that sounds esoteric, but do I have proper AP coverage via wired switches, such that if a whole switch goes down or specific ports go down, does that actually bring down my access points because they're connected via PoE, and now I have holes on my wireless network based upon my wired switch port configuration? So those are some of the examples that we do on all third-party access as part of our wired assurance service. What's interesting, though, is we've actually taken that one step further in that our wired assurance on Junos, specifically on the Juniper solution, really takes this to the next level. So what we are able to do in Juniper switches are, for example, things like service levels. So you can specifically set up service levels around things like throughput, successful connects, such that if any one of these things falls below a certain level, you can create completely automated workflows. So you can create trouble tickets, you can notify your help desk, you can even go into self-driving mode to correct some of these issues, which we'll show you in a second. So this is really leveraging the full beauty of an AI-driven network in terms of establishing service levels and doing automated workflows to make things happen efficiently. Similarly, what we do as part of mutual information and data science is event correlation. So because we're collecting all this information using Junos and using our missed access points, we have the ability to use our machine learning and AI engine to correlate all that data. So we can come back and easily identify what is the root cause of a problem. If someone complains, was it the wireless issue, or was it a port issue, or was it a backend like a DHCP issue? Was it a configuration issue? Was it a client issue? Was it a bandwidth issue? So that correlation is really key to understanding what's happening in your network and proactively addressing that. And then also what we'll show you, again, is we have added Marvis on top of the wired world. And as I mentioned prior, that is our virtual network assistant, so the ability to do simple language queries as well as our Marvis Actions dashboard to understand what's going on. So let me actually dive into that a little bit more, and let me explain what Marvis is to all of you. So Marvis, is our AI engine. So it does have the ability to take all this information I mentioned and correlate it. But what we've added on top of that is a virtual network assistant. And what the VNA does is actually twofold. One is if everything is inside of our control and we can recognize a problem, VNA can go into self-driving mode. So for example, it can do things like change power output on an AP, or change channels on an AP, or even do things like alter VLAN configurations if some were detected as wrong. So that's full self-driving mode. And admittedly, some things are out of our control, so you can't do everything in self-driving. And also, it might be a little bit of a trust factor. Some folks aren't quite ready to take their hands off the wheel quite yet. So to assist in those environments, we also have what's called driver-assisted mode. I kind of liken this to more the Tesla self-driving mode, where rather than completely automating everything you can do, it comes back and gives very specific human actions as to what you can and should do. So it kind of correlates all that event information and comes back and says, if there's anything you need to focus on today, this is it. And here's how you can go fix it, and then it'll loop back and tell you if you actually solved the problem. So rather than spend time on PowerPoint, I am going to switch to a demo. So let's run with that real quick, and we can kind of walk you through some of the things I mentioned. So hopefully everyone can see my screens right now. So as I said, I'm going to run through a little bit of a flow, and I'm not going to show every thing under the sun associated with our product. I'm going to try to highlight some of the things that really make both the wireless assurance and the wired assurance a little bit unique. And I will start with the wireless, because as I said, I do think it sets the foundation for what we're doing on the wired side. But if folks do want more information on that, I really encourage you to attend the Wireless Wednesday. So the first thing I do want to show off, which is critical to the AI-driven enterprise, is this concept known as service levels. So Mist and Juniper really are the first in the industry to do network-driven service levels that really let you focus on the specific user experience and not the network experience. What we like to say at Mist Juniper is that up is not the same as good. Just because your network is up and running doesn't mean the people on the network are actually having a good user experience. And the only way to really get that visibility into that user experience is this concept known as service levels. So here, for example, you can see that we have a whole bunch of top metrics associated with wireless service levels, and you can come in and adapt these as you see fit to adjust to your needs. And at any given day, you can look and see, am I meeting my service levels? Are there specific times of day when I'm having problems? Does it map to specific hardware or software changes? So if I just push out a new load, that actually make a specific service metric fall and impact that user experience. So again, this concept of service levels is really unique in the industry, and tying it to specific metrics associated with specific user experiences is very new. And also tying these to specific workloads, automated workflows. So for example, if this metric fell below 80%, which looks like it really has, again, the ability to set off trouble tickets and to notify the correct folks with recommended actions is all about proactive automation that you get with the AI-driven enterprise. Second thing is you can drill down into one of these metrics and you can actually see, again, event correlation. So here in the wireless world, you can come back and say, well, was the issue due to wireless, or was this connection issue due to the fact that the DHCP server wasn't working? Or maybe the internet was dropping packets. So again, here you can see that wired and wireless correlation come together. So IT administrators are no longer chasing their tail and trying to figure out where the problem was. They can get right to the root cause of the problem and fix it with recommendations that we'll show you in a second. We also give you the ability to show, across which wireless networks, wired networks, types of devices, operating systems, where are you having the problem? And we can do predictive analytics. So if things are trending in a bad direction, if they're showing up red, again, you could flag that using anomaly detection and get ahead of that problem, oftentimes before the user even knows it exists, right? So again, this is the impetus behind how Mist has become so successful, how we've won 3 of the Fortune 10 and over 30 of the top 50 retailers, all by using this AI-driven automation in the wireless world. But as we said, last year, we also expanded this to the wired world. And so really what you can now see is that, just like you have your service levels on the wireless domain, you also can get them on the wired domain. And so again, here are the 3 major service levels that we put in place. There is throughput, successful connects, and switch health. But again, just like before, it gives visibility into both the network experience and the user experience. And then you have the ability to actually drill into any of these specific areas. And again, you can come in and understand exactly what's going on. So again, is it specific to this issue, or is it due to network storms or your uplink problem or other areas? Again, what types of users are impacted by this problem? How widespread is it? Is it on specific VLANs or interfaces, as well as which switches are also impacted by the problem? So again, you have the ability to go and do all that type of activity and then drill into what's going on. You also then have the ability to actually drill into the switch themselves. So you can actually pull up a switch. You can look at any of the specific ports. Here's some of those switch health metrics I mentioned before. So it's having a firmware compliance issue or a PoE compliance issue or other VLAN issues. This is all right here and in front of you. You also have the ability to use specific utilities to test that thing, to test that switch. So whether it's a ping or trace route or a cable test. A cable test sounds so simple, but this is one of the single biggest problems and use cases that Mist Wired Assurance solves, right? It's very difficult to understand if there's a layer 1 issue. And if there is a layer 1 issue, to figure out which cable is bad. We make this bone dry simple, so if you have bad cables in your network, you can drill down and figure out where that is once and for all, okay? Just like you can drill down to the switches, you also can drill down into your wired clients. So here, again, I can pick any specific client, and I can get insights into, again, how much throughput is it driving and what is its overall performance over time. So you can drill down into that as well. Okay. The next thing I do want to show is Marvis. So as we mentioned, Marvis is our virtual network assistant, and it really does let you use natural language queries to ask very specific questions associated with what's happening in your network. So for example, I can say, what is wrong with my AP in the boardroom? What was happening in the past 7 days? And admittedly, there hasn't been a lot of people in our boardroom over the last 7 days because everyone's at home. But again, you can see here's what's happening in the network. And what's interesting about this is, this provides information, as we said, across both the wireless domain, the back-end wired domain, as well as the, the internet domain. So you can really drill down to problems, and understand their root cause. Here, for example, again, is I'm saying troubleshoot the client printer, or I can type in, what was wrong with Jeff's iPhone? And again, it correlates that across the different domains. Again, it's a little hard to get information here because no one's been in the office recently, which is, I guess, a good thing. The network's running pretty smoothly. But what's interesting with Marvis is, again, it understands the intent behind the question. So in addition to just saying, Jeff's iPhone is having problems, it also can come back and say, it's not just Jeff's iPhone that's having issues, it's all iPhones. There's all iPhones in this room, or it's all iPhones running this version of iOS, right? So now you can start to see that aggregating that information and bubbling that up is huge. And that is not a trivial problem to solve. That is actually a very difficult problem to solve, but we've done it with our Marvis VNA. Okay. Now, the very last thing that I do want to show is what we call Marvis Actions. So as we said, Marvis has a couple different elements and nuances to it. There's the NLP, where you can ask it questions and it'll give you answers. There's the self-driving, where if we detect something, it'll go and just fix it for you. And then there's Marvis Actions, which is kind of, as we mentioned, the quote-unquote driver assist. So with Marvis Actions, what we can actually do is, we call this your cup of coffee dashboard. So if you were to come in the morning, this is the one dashboard you should look at, and it tells you exactly what's going on in your network and where you have problems. Ideally, you want this to be 0, but this will come back and actually distill exactly what's going on into specific human actions. So for example, if there's a missing VLAN or whatever, it'll come out and flag it. If there's an ongoing recurring issue, it'll let you know. If you actually fix an issue, it'll let you know. If you tried and did not fix an issue, it will let you know. And then you can drill down into what each of those specific issues are. So for example, we mentioned before, finding bad cables is a very simple use case, but a very powerful one. Here we're showing that this switch on Avi's desk actually has a bad cable. And again, we can't go fix the cable, but we can tell you exactly what you should go do and how you should fix it. Or similarly, if there's some missing VLANs, again, here's some of the VLANs that are missing. These are the switches where they exist. Again, you now have the ability to go drill down into that environment and go fix it using these recommendations. So again, you can now start to see how this is getting powerful. It's not just about dumping event logs on our customers and saying, here you go figure it out. It's not about bringing in third-party tools to try to correlate all that data. It's all here. It's all right in front of you. It can all be accessed remotely, which is especially good if, again, if folks are stuck at home. It uses AI to automatically correlate the information, and it gives you, again, insight. It's not just about pushing data. It's about pushing insight. And to be frank, that is the real difference between our AI and what other vendors actually call AI. This is real. It's been in existence for several years. And it's brought tremendous value to the likes of the Amazons and the Walmarts of the world, to the VA administration, to Gap and other big name retailers throughout the world. So as we mentioned, we kind of talked about a variety of different aspects to the Mist Juniper solution. But when it comes to wired assurance, as we mentioned, there's really two things that we're doing. There's the basic wired switch health that we can do in any third-party platform, which is, again, pulling in data around firmware and PoE and VLAN configuration. And then there's the more advanced, which we can do on Juniper switches, primarily EX access and aggregation switches, which includes things like service levels, automated workflows, and as well as Marvis troubleshooting on those networks. And so, hopefully, everyone is able to kind of get a good feel from the actual demo. So I'm going to pause as we're approaching the bottom of the hour here and open it up to questions. I do know we have Teresa on my team standing guard, and I think she's going to jump on the line and help me moderate some of the questions that have come in. Teresa, you there?
Yep. Awesome job, Jeff. So we have a couple questions. One from Grant. He said, do you say the EX switches are now managed by Mist Cloud? And then can you also go through the supported platforms as well as Junos version?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. So the Mist EX access and aggregation switches are managed via the Mist Cloud today. So that includes the EX 2300, 3400, 4300, 4600, and 4650. You can also still manage them via the traditional Juniper route, e.g. CSO. But if you do want to get the wired assurance, that is all part of the Mist Cloud. And to do that, that does require Junos version 18.2 release 1 or later.
Perfect.
Is there another part to that question, Teresa?
Nope, that was it. We have two questions from Danny. The first one is, what is the roadmap to management EX? So I guess what is the overall EX roadmap from a management perspective?
I think we kind of touched on that a little bit. So ultimately, the goal is to bring the Juniper portfolio as part of the AI-driven enterprise. And so key to that is integrating with Marvis for AI operations and moving it into primarily into the cloud, with the Mist Cloud being the primary objective to that. Again, that having been said, there are still other management platforms, Sky Enterprise and CSO available. But to take the full advantage of the AI-driven enterprise and AI-driven operations, the goal is to get the portfolio under the Mist Cloud, at least for access and aggregation. And we've done that with the wired assurance.
Great. And then another question from Danny. I don't know if you would know this off the top of your head, but is there a way that he is able to watch the top applications on an EX device?
Yeah. So we do. You can drill down and set policies based upon which applications are being allowed and which are not, and then track specific stats around that. So yeah, I encourage you to download the demo and you can play around with that. But we do some application level of visibility around that in terms of policies and costs as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. That's all the questions that I had from the chat.
Awesome. Well, okay. Again, I appreciate doing this. As I said, this is my first Toolkit Tuesday, so it's exciting to be out here and do this. We know everyone is hopefully engaged and has the bandwidth to take on some new talks or demos. So as you said, we really encourage folks to go download that. And if there's any follow-up questions, again, please don't hesitate to reach out to anyone in the Juniper team. Thanks again for spending the time, everybody, and hopefully we'll talk soon.